Joanna, are you able to?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Hello, Gary. How are you?
Very good. If you can just give me a second here, I'm trying to get my automatic babysitter going.
No worries.
Vera or somebody from Vera's office called and left a message saying that she would not be able to attend this meeting. So
I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
I called back to make sure David would be available, and they said yes, he would be here.
Oh, that's great. Good. Wonderful.
That's me coming in as a second. Well, there he is.
You all set? Good. I'm on babysitter duty, so there may be some interruptions. I'm still down at Cape Cod, and my daughter and her husband are in Europe. So
You're babysitting. But how wonderful to be in Cape Cod right now. Oh,
it was
must be great.
nice. Yeah, kids been
I
great.
bet it's- Oh, that's wonderful. Dave, how are you? Are you doing well?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Spent the day driving back and forth to Albany, having a little meeting with the chief privacy officer and the data privacy advisory committee.
Fun, good times.
Yeah.
I know that would make me want to get out of bed every morning. Woo-hoo. Okay, we have about 3 minutes, I think, and then we can probably get started.
You're in outer space.
Trish, are you leading the New York Mills search?
Yeah. Yep, I'm leading the New York Mills search and the Clinton search.
Oh, that's right, Clinton. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 of them. I enjoy it though. I really like the work. I like working with the board members, and I really enjoy meeting the candidates and community stakeholder groups is kind of fun too. Like, so I was able to meet with different stakeholders in New York Mills, and then on Monday I had online forums with members of the Clinton community, and I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the experience this afternoon with the DPAC committee, and the parent advocates tend to come out of the New York City area. And so it's very interesting that they have to kind of get educated about trying to find that single little old PT or OT up in St. Lawrence County who's going to, provide those services. It's just such a different world. And we have people who do come, in fact, from the different environments. And we had DS from up in Malone is on, and he's a former RIC director also. So he's got a pretty good point of view. And, or the whole importance of the athletic software, the coaching and the game films and that kind of stuff is like totally lost on people from New York City. So, it takes a while for everybody to understand what the concerns are around the table, because they're a little different. And they're
Yeah,
just different populations. I think that's what I was reading between the lines when you were just speaking about your forums in the Clinton community and your forums in the New York Mills community. Over here, your Rome community and your VVS community are going to be a little different. So.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too. When we are at SED as district superintendents, you have all the differences of the regions of the state and the school systems and how they work also, and when we're in the meetings with SED staff, it is different, because then you have the parochials, you have the publics, you have the big five, you have the BOCES, there's a lot to it. So I agree. I think it's interesting, to be a part of a group where people get these nuances.
Yeah.
I also like it too when you go to when you're at national meetings, because the school systems and how public school works is very different across the country. So I just always find that interesting too.
Yeah. So we're up in 5AB today for our meeting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Commissioner dropped in and eavesdropped for a few minutes.
5AB, how many of you were in the room?
Let's see. I'm going to say probably 8 to 11. There were probably 18 or 19 people, and then 4 on Zoom.
Well, in some of the regions meetings, there's, over 50.
Yeah.
DS meetings, it's quite a few of us. It's over 40, with the DSs and other staff. It can start to feel pretty tight in there, that's for sure. Especially coming out of the pandemic, the last thing you want to do is be in a room, like this with people on top of you, but there it is. All right, so we have Scott and we have Chris, and it's 2 minutes after 5. Do we want to continue? And if Michelle comes in?
Yeah, Michelle's not going to be able to attend tonight.
Okay.
Tell me that.
So, Gary, are we fine moving forward with one board member? Okay. All right. With that being said, let us begin the amazing process of policy with policy 5100, which is an update. We have previously reviewed the policy and we sent it back for some revision. I had no questions about this because we have seen and reviewed it before, but I wasn't sure if any others might have had some.
My only comment is that it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. That's it.
And I'll just fill in, Dr. Kilburn, that you had raised, the committee had raised some questions last time, as you said, about whether certain things had to be specified in the policy, and you'll see they're deleted. We went back and satisfied ourselves that identities of those categories did not need to be there, but we did come up with a couple of other things that we felt should be in there. Yeah, but it was mostly to be responsive to the committee's questions last time.
And I think that was helpful because I was concerned with the specificity of it tying us in more. So though to Gary's point, there's quite a few things we have to meet, and a lot of that's aligned with regulation and law now, but I think it's a little bit broader for us, which is better. So thank you for that work. I do appreciate it very much. Do we have any other questions about this policy?
Nope.
Okay. So I think this one is ready to move forward. Clearly we can see all the markings in here. That will be cleared before it goes before the board. Or it will be questions galore. Okay, so I think we're good with the AED policy moving forward. And that brings us to policy 5301, purpose, use, and administration of district digital information systems revised. Again, this was a policy we've reviewed. Dave, do you want to just talk about revisions made?
I think most of the underlying stuff was here before, and this round two was, I think, just to correct the title in Roman numeral 3C from Director of I&T to Assistant Superintendent for Support Services. Hopefully we got that title correct. The other underlying material, which would be new here, though, was, I think, carried over from the prior 5301. So it was new to our template, but it was not new to OHM BOCES. So we made the title corrections where necessary. And other than that, I think it's what the folks saw and went through last time.
Were there questions about this revised policy?
It just seems to me, and I can't say this for certain, but it seems like there's a lot of redundancy in here. You keep saying the same thing over and over again, you know, under different categories. Seems to be consistent, but just redundant.
Well, do you think it has to do with the different headers, though? Like where we're, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's under this header, you say something, and then another header, you say the same thing.
Yep.
I don't know if it's worth cleaning up or not. I really don't think so.
Okay. Any other thoughts about this policy? Okay, hearing none, I think we're ready to say we're good to go on that. So that's policy 5301. Barring any objection is good to go. Which brings us to policy 3001, administrative personnel.
If I may, Dr. Coburn, may I have the floor for a moment?
You may have the floor for a moment.
What the committee has in front of it is, as you can see, pretty much carryover from existing policies. These are policies that are that were prepared, written, drafted, whatever you want to call it, by OHM BOCES, and don't align with any templates that we have prepared or maintained over here. And although we send it on to you, because if you want to continue living with it, that is, of course, the board's prerogative. But I have some concerns in this, and if the audience will bear with me, I can kind of walk through these and call out what I see as some of the concerns. Because one of the things as we go through is that this appears to, this suite of policies appears to deal with a population, our administration, which some of which is under ed law and some of which comes from civil service law.
Right.
And I'm not sure that's always kept straight in here. So for example, right in 3001, Roman numeral 1, management, kind of caught my attention right away, because usually we think of management as management and labor. But your administrators that you go on to talk about are themselves labor, right? Because they have their own bargaining unit. So I don't know if the board following this policy in the past has actually ever designated anyone as those responsible for the administrative and supervisory tasks. I doubt there's been any actual follow-up on that, making a list, if you will. It seems to be buried, I think, probably in job titles based on my experience.
So can we go back, Dave? Because I'm losing you a little bit, and I want to make sure I'm understanding. So if we look at that paragraph at A, it uses the word management, right?
Right.
And it's our employees that are officially designated by the board as responsible for the administrative and supervisory tasks to carry out board policy programs, decisions, and actions. And the concern you have is with the term management?
Well, right. To begin with, I don't think that's a term you'll find in anywhere else in the policy book, as a category.
Yeah.
And I would say, and maybe this is just my labor relations specialist hat, but usually we think of management as being linked with or in contrast to labor,
Yeah,
but your
I got
group
it.
here
Okay,
isn't an
now I
administrator's
understand.
union. You know, it is a
Yep.
bargaining unit. At least many of them are.
Yep.
Not all. Unless there's been some designation as described there.
I would
and if-
agree, like, we do use the term management in its relationship to labor. And we tend to use in this organization supervisors. We have department supervisors and we have other supervisors. So I wonder if should we repeat the word administrators? So administrators shall be considered those employees.
Well, if the board's going to define policies that apply to, if you need that term administrators in general, I guess, and then Roman numeral 2, just to look ahead, is the establishment of administrative positions. Now, under the education law, there's a lot of law out there that talks about what an administrative position is and how to appoint one. I'm not sure what this policy was trying to get at. If it was trying to lay out the procedures that are in law under the education law for appointing an administrator, such as to a probationary period, then, it would need to be, I think, pretty rewritten, and we would need a separate section of it for the civil service people, because that situation is all different. And the probationary period is all different for civil service employees.
Right, yeah, and you're correct. So in this policy, they talk about, is it this policy or one of them that I read? They talk about the probationary period for an administrator will be 4 years unless they're classified, right? And then for classified staff, it'll be according to the terms of civil service. So I think what you're asking, if I'm understanding it correctly, is do we really need these as separate policies when we have civil service and ed law that defines this for our organizations?
And also there's, at the end of this policy, a 1-sentence statement about evaluations. And of course, as we all know, at least for ed law, well, for principals, we've got APPR. The administrative cadre that I think is being addressed here, probably that doesn't apply to. But I just wonder if you'd want to say more about performance evaluations than this 1 sentence. So just one other thing is that in this policy, in Roman numeral 2D, and this is reflected in E also, there's something about 2 consecutive meetings because of educational certification or discrete tenure. And I wasn't sure where the 2 consecutive meetings was coming from, because that doesn't align with anything we know about implementing appointments and probation periods or tenure decisions.
That was one of the questions I did want to ask, was the same thing about the 2 meetings, because it's not necessary for part of a tenure decision. So I didn't know if that was something in particular, maybe in the past with the board, was something that they wanted to be sure was there. I do wonder about that. Like, do we really need to have a separate policy when everything that's really described here is already covered and we have to follow it, right? We can't deviate from any of it. The only thing that would be separate would be evaluation of our classified staff. Are there other opinions on this or thoughts about it?
Well, basically, Dave, you said we made this up ourselves, right? It's not required.
Well, I tried not to say made up, Scott, but yes. It's true that this is certainly not a required policy. There may be elements, and frankly, this is true for the whole set here of 3000s. There may be things in here the board still wants to address, but I think they need to be read by the board in this committee against the background of what's actually going on. Gary's raised the question, Michelle's raised the question before, are we really doing this? And there are things throughout these 4 or 5 policies where I wonder if it's really being done. And so I didn't know if I could send sort of a commentary, Dr. Kilburn, about what to look for in these, or the committee can just say, let's look at them and talk amongst ourselves about how much of this purpose is needed, and then we over here could help you, wordsmith just that part of it.
If I can jump in, we didn't get a lot of feedback from supervisors on these set of policies, but the feedback we did get was very similar to what has been mentioned. Like in the next policy, they talk about central office staff, which is a term we've never used, right? That nobody in the organization really uses central office staff, that it's very kind of ambiguous and undefined and doesn't necessarily match the practices that are going on. So there was, and again, I'm saying there's very few comments from our supervisory staff about these, but they were along the same lines as do they match what's happening, stuff like that.
I think, go ahead, Gary.
Some of this handcuffs us in a way that
We don't
if
want to
we
be.
do it ourselves, why are we doing that?
Yeah.
I mean, again, all this is covered in, civil service law. There's enough laws as it is. I don't know.
Yes. And it's really reiterating a lot of what we already have to do, or further complicating it. What might be a good idea, Dave, if you are willing to write a commentary to that effect, then the senior counsel, Chris, Scott, and I could go through it. That way we could call and talk about it if we have questions. And then we could make a recommendation to the policy committee regarding, do we move these off? Because I think it would take some explaining. We'd want to really thoroughly go through it, make some recommendations so the policy committee could then have a chance to talk about it. Because if we were ultimately to significantly revise or delete these, we'd want to make sure we could explain that to the full board. And I, to your point, I think that runs through really every one of these, the 3,000.
Right. Yeah.
So if I'm not hearing any objection to that effect, I think we should follow Dave's recommendation and allow the policy service to put together some commentary for us on the 3,000s, bring that through the administrative council, and then back up to this committee with recommendations regarding the future of these policies.
So would that go up to the administrative council or the central office staff or the management? Which of those three?
Exactly, whichever one. The one I call the senior council, which apparently is the administrative council.
Yeah.
Well,
That one.
folks, to that point, I mean, there may be structural things that the board feels should be mapped in a board statement called policy. But it should reflect current practice, current organization, I would say. But and we are looking for, although Gary doesn't think we did a very good job on one of our policies, we do look for redundancy. And you've got evaluation as the last sentence of one,
Yeah.
and then the last policy in that set has a section that talks about
Right. Yeah.
evaluation, and it is a delicate matter, and it is in some places addressed in policy, but the relationship between a board and the superintendent, or in this case, the board and the district superintendent, it needs to also reflect the fact that there's generally an employment contract where things like evaluation have been worked out. And if that's the case in the practice, then do we need to do something in policy that then every time you negotiated a contract
Have to go back.
with a DS, you'd have to see if what the parties agreed to then come back and fits policy, what have you. I mean, just some of these cases might not arise, but we over here get paid to think about worst case scenarios. So that's what we're doing.
Actually, it helps us segue. If we're all in agreement on this, it created a bit of a segue into something I'd like to talk about with the committee in terms of outstanding policies and adding some to the schedule moving forward. What I'm writing on this is a proposal to table the 3,000s, the policy service to review all and make recommendations regarding the future of these policies. in particular. And then the senior council will review and we'll touch base with the policy service. And then we're gonna bring that back to the committee, return to the policy committee.
Okay.
Okay. I did have a chance to go through pending policies. Joanna had done a really nice job creating a table for us. And I wanted to see that we could add Title IX to the August cycle. So, because what I'd like to do, the policy service put together a beautiful like summary and it's based for decision-making within Title IX. And I'd like, again, for Chris and Scott and I to take some time to go through that, see what's applicable to the organization, and then bring that to the policy committee for a discussion at the August policy committee meeting to give us enough time to go through it all. And then I would like to bring forward, I know that some of us are just a little bit nervous or curious or desiring to learn more about it, but I think we need to bring the DEI policy forward for discussion and learning. So I'm not asking.
I'm not following.
Okay, so we have a DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusivity policy. It's in draft form and it was brought up at a board meeting.
Yep.
We haven't brought it forward to the policy committee yet, but Madison Oneida Board Policy Service has drafted a DEI policy. There's a lot in it and I don't think we're ready to take action, but I think the policy committee should start reading through it and discussing and asking some questions so we can start to look toward the future of that policy, because I think there's some things there that we need some consideration of. So I would recommend that we just do it like a first reading, initial reading of it in the committee of that policy, and maybe have that move forward on the next meeting in July. That was the one where Michelle had said, she's not sure where to begin with the policy because there's a lot there, but I think it's a good first step. And then policy 1102, printed materials. There was a request by our office, our school library services to review that policy. So if we could bring that into the July 21st policy meeting. And then this ties into the discussion we just have, which is policy 3211, which is the organizational chart, the organizational model. The board member just asked about that, and we have something that we've been working on in the organization. So I think that's a good policy to bring forward to the July 21 meeting.
And Dr. Kilburn, what was the number on that one, please?
3211. So that would have, I don't have the number for the draft DEI policy because I don't think it has a number yet because it's a draft, it's a new policy. So that would come forward in July. Joanna, with a note, because I know that Michelle's not here and we might have some new members coming on at that point for July. So if you could, when you attach that into the email for the policy committee meeting, make a note that this is just an initial review for preliminarily discussion and question asking, because it's brand new. It's something that Madison just drafted. And then that along with policy 1102 and 3211. Then the Title IX policy with recommendations that we received from the Madison Policy Service. We'll have the senior council look at that and we'll move that up into the policy committee meeting at the August policy committee. And then the other question I had was for Chris. Chris, I think we need to bring the code of conduct. It's a policy and we have to make sure it goes through the board review. So I think maybe we might want to bring that through here because there was some language that needed to be added to the code. And when it's added to the code, it gets dropped. It allows us to delete another policy. It was part of a previous discussion. So I want to make sure that we have a chance to go through that, but that might mean you might have to have some committee meetings in advance of August.
They've already had those, right?
Okay.
So they've started the review cycle already. So
we should be good. So hopefully in August, we could talk about Title IX. code of conduct. It'll be a beefy meeting. Two really pretty beefy policies. So this meeting, maybe not as beefy, but future ones, I think are going to be like,
Mhm.
you look excited about that, Gary.
Well, yes, actually I am. But, I was reading your self-review.
Mhm.
One of the things I thought I saw in there is that when we get into procedures, you're planning on running those through this committee also?
No,
No.
no, we're going to create a similar cycle for procedures that we have. So in the self-review, I talked about creating a full policy cycle.
Right?
And then as part of the existing policy cycle now, our labor leaders and our department supervisors have an opportunity to preview policy
Right.
before it comes to this committee. And what we're finding is in their recommendations, much of the recommendations they're making are actually procedural recommendations.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to capture that information that comes from them and any pertinent procedural
Okay.
made in this committee and then wrap it into the procedure cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, much more sense.
You're like, I was confused before, but now it makes sense.
No, my general belief on everything is to have as few policies as possible and as many procedures as possible, that everything runs through procedure. And you seem to be setting up a procedure review process that has the department involved plus departments affected by the department involved, which
Yes.
I think is great. I think that's essential, especially the people that are affected by it really become drivers to make things happen.
Yep.
And the people that have to do the work aren't going to want to do it, but the people that are going to be benefited by it will drive it. And it's essential to have both groups in a procedure.
Process.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because it's the only way progress happens is you got to get the people that are going to benefit in the room, or else the people that have to do the work will never do anything.
Right. You have one perspective versus the dual perspective. Absolutely. Okay. Any other thoughts about where we're going at our next policy meeting?
Nope.
Okay, Dave.
Yeah, just so what I think I heard is that for the July meeting, Dr. Kilburn, you see the committee's agenda being the sort of opening discussions around DEI draft,
Yep.
your 1102 and 3211.
Yes. And
Now-
what about the 3000s?
Well, okay, and right, and so if I've gotten that back to you,
And if you
you
need
guys
more
may
time
be, you
with
guys
it,
may be ready to move forward on that. Yeah.
yeah. And if we can't, like, so if you're trying to write a review of your interpretation of those policies and we can't wrap it into July and we need to move it to August, that's really okay.
No, that's okay. I've got some optimism that, you'll have what you need for you guys to talk about it amongst yourselves and see what you want your next step to be.
Okay.
And that's fine. And then August is Title IX, and Title IX, what you're doing there has implications for some other existing non-discrimination policies. So it's worth leaving room for discussion and what Chris pulls together on the code of conduct. So, okay, I mean, I'll let Vera know and Christine know that that's kind of where you guys are headed.
I do want to check though, Joanna, or do we have enough, were we planning to go somewhere next on the policy schedule for July and August? Because do we need to incorporate some of the regular schedule in there?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the question.
The policy schedule
Yes.
for July and for August. So I want to look at these policies. We need to have some discussion, but I also don't want to fall too far behind on our policy schedule.
Mhm.
So what was the plan on the policy schedule? What are we up against in July?
I'm not sure offhand. I think we're in good shape.
Okay,
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's fine.
all right, that's good, because then we could define stuff in July and August and then hit the school year running in September in the cycle again.
Yeah, and I know at our end, I had talked with Vera about this, and it would be section 2000. If everything else here had been put to bed, she'd be preparing 2000s. But I think we, and that's a long section, unlike
Yeah.
the 3000s. So it'll
Right.
probably be 2 or 3 chunks to go through the 2000s once they get rolling.
Okay, so maybe what we'll do is try to move through these policies so that in September we can initiate the 2000s. And then that's probably gonna be like September, October, November, and then in December onto the next group. Okay, I feel pretty good about all of this. Any questions before we close off? All right, so I hope you have a good night, and I will see you later.
Okay.